As I was writing the stories for this talk, my baby girl had just started crawling. She reaches for everything, including my computer. So this is intermittently thrown into my typed talk. Writing this talk with a crawling baby was actually harder than learning English as a fourth language. It was actually easier to work on my law degree. I was able to sit in the library until 11 p.m. and study for hours without distraction. My daughter has a similar childhood as I did. She has loving parents, lots of cousins. She has a roof over her head. Hers is less leaky than mine. She also has food in her belly. She has water. Ours was definitely less clean. The differences are she has toys and books. She has a safe country. She has an actual country. And on this May 23rd, when she received her birth certificate in the mail, I looked at it. I was very emotional, and I was also thankful. That is something that I still do not have. You see, I grew up in a refugee camp in Iraq. I was born there, and I lived there until I was 14. That was my childhood home. No matter where we grew up, we all have similar memories. We remember our living rooms, we remember the games we played, and we remember the friends that we spent time with. Memories can define who we are. I'm sure you remember where you were on September 11th, 2001. I was still living in the camp when my mother left my sister and I some chores to do. And as usual, I turned on the TV, which was in the living room, to listen to some music. Yes, I had a TV in my home. Suddenly, the music stopped, and when I went to look at the TV, I saw a plane going into this really tall building. It was very shocking, so I called my sister to come watch with me. And to be honest, I didn't really think about this event until a few years later when I was in Canada, and I was in high school. And a guy came up to me and asked me if I knew where Osama bin Laden was. That's when I started thinking about that event. And I thought the events of that day would have no impact on my life. Little did I know that it would actually cause the destruction of the very home that I was standing in, along with the rest of the camp. Millions of people were displaced, killed, or wounded. My own sister-in-law and her two sisters were shot. Little did I know that my own father would be shot and injured by US soldiers in Iraq when he went back to prepare for my brother's wedding. Now, in order to understand my story, a bit of historical context is required. So stick with me. I am a Kurd, but not cheese Kurds, but human Kurds. I know, that was a cheesy joke. The Kurds are the largest ethnic group in the world without a state. Colonial powers, including the British and the French, drew borders dividing the Kurdish region among 4 countries, including Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. And the Kurds make up about 35 million people. The Kurds are mostly Muslims, with Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, and people of other faith traditions. The best chance for a Kurdish state came in 1920 with the signing of the Treaty of Severus. The treaty promised the Kurds a small state in what is now northern Kurdistan. The rest of the Kurdish region was to remain under the control of the British, the French, and the Iranians. However, with the rise of the nationalist Turkish movement, under their new leader, Kemal Mustafa Atatürk, who renegotiated and signed the Treaty of Lausanne, which effectively ended the emergent Kurdish state. The years that followed were filled with repression and attempts at erasing Kurdish identity throughout the region, which continues to this day. In 1979, Iran and Iraq went to war. And my parents and thousands of other Kurdish families who are originally from the Kurdish area of Iran and who were living there at the time fled their homes. Then, once they were at a refugee camp just over the border, close to their homes, they were forcibly put into military tanks by Saddam Hussein's military and moved over to southern Iraq outside the city of Ramadi. It was at this refugee camp that my parents spent 22 years. The Kurds continued to be affected by one war after another. In 1988, Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons against the Kurds in the city of Halabja, killing 5,000 people. This terrified the people of our camp. They were scared that Saddam would do the same thing to us. So parents and people took precautions as best as they knew how. So my mother tells me that I lived in a hole when I was a toddler. Let me explain. My mother loved her children very much. Parents dug up holes in their backyards, and every morning they would put food and water, and they would also put their babies in the hole, along with the food and water. And they would go about doing their household chores, but the plan was, if the chemical weapons were to be dropped, the parents then quickly could join their supposedly safe babies in the holes. Things became even worse for us in the camp in the 90s with the Gulf War and the sanctions that followed. The United States bombed the only factory making baby formula in Baghdad. My own sister, who almost died because there was no formula for her and because there was not enough food for my mother so that my sister can be breastfed. Due to the bombings of Iraq and the sanctions that followed at the time, it caused the death of 500,000 children. Many children in our camp also died, and many suffered with malnutrition and disease. Then in 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. Again, this brought tremendous suffering to the people of our camp. They ended up fleeing wherever they could. Some people ended up living in a no man's land at the border between Iraq and Jordan, living in horrid conditions. By 2006, everyone had fled the camp because of the violence. And so my childhood home and the home of thousands of children, the place where we were born and the place where our childhood memories came from, was now in ruins. The only way that we can visit our place of birth is only through our memories or through a Google Map image. We were lucky to be one of the few families who came to Canada in 2001. We arrived in Canada on December 13th, 2001, on a very chilly day. One of the scariest things that I can remember from that day, that time, was our first day of school, because my siblings and I had only gone to school for a few years and we could not speak any English at all. We also did not have any family or friends here. I remember coming home after our first day of school, telling our parents we had to go back to the camp, that there was no way we could fit in or be happy here. And my parents told us we should just go back one more time, just one more day, and see how we feel. And I remember walking into the school with my two eldest siblings on the second day. I was as terrified as the day before. But this time I saw a woman walking by me and she gave me this really big smile. And all day I thought about her smile. Even all week I thought about her smile, and even after that. With her smile, I felt that she acknowledged my existence there at the school in Canada. And with it, I felt that she was telling me it was okay for me to be there and that everything was going to be all right. I was lucky because she happened to be my EAL teacher. She continued to genuinely smile and to be kind and to be supportive, very supportive, and to accept us for who we were at the time. Now, losing your home is not just about losing your physical home and belongings. Really, it's about being separated from the memories you have made in that space. And it's about being separated from a culture and a history. Really, it comes down to losing your sense of belonging. And the point of this talk here is not to make you feel sorry for me, but really it's to encourage you to create a world that you would want your children to grow up in. So if you want your children to grow up in a world without war, you would really have to pay attention to what politicians say about sanctions and about invasion of other countries and initiation of war. And I encourage you to vote for leaders who are against war, and to protest and to speak up against war, and to inform and educate others about the terrible effects of war. The stories you heard now is really like the result of war. That's what it does to people. And the effects don't go away in 10 years or 20 years. And for those of you who work in the resettlement process, allow newcomers to find home on their own terms. You see, some newcomers come with no education, while others come with a great deal of education and expertise. Some newcomers come with no knowledge of English or French. Some people come with 6 languages. But they are all worthy of dignity, and they are all deserving of a peaceful place they can call home. And for those of you who have lost your home and are starting rebuild, work on your healing. And know that the traumatic experiences that you've had in your life do not define who you are. You are more than that. And know that every human being deserves to have a home, and so do you.